We're all going to have to share the mic tonight, yeah. Three of us. Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Silito. I'm part of the Show and Tell Gallery Creative Collaborative. We're a group of volunteers and creative people who put on shows on Monday nights. You can read more about us we have a Facebook group if you'd like to join and be informed about what's going on, or at showandtellgallery.org. And the event is being podcast by Joel Wegman, and the rest of our team includes Patrick Bocard, Mary Slocum, David DeSerrano, Rio Hibler-Kerr, and Nathan Reynolds. Yeah. So before our future comes up to do a performance, I'm just going to introduce him. For about 15 minutes, and then Patrick and I are going to come up on the stage, and all of us, whoever wants to participate, are going to have a conversation about what is it like to make art or music or writing in Portland, and how do you make a living while you're doing both of those things, because some people do it at the same time, but many of us don't. So we'll have that lively discussion. Hey, do you want to take over?
Well, I didn't know you were going to be here. I didn't hear back from anybody. So.
Oh, I said something on Facebook. This is the lovely and talented Rio who is sick.
Oh, Nathan, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No, never mind. Hang on to your phone.
Yeah.
You know what? If you've got it, go for it. I didn't look at Facebook all day today. I was doing other shit.
I'll walk out with you after I introduce Nathan, and we'll figure it out. Okay. Yes. Rio's a better interviewer than I am, actually. Nathan Tompkins is a poet living in the Portland area. Thanks to his proactive literary mother, by the age of 9, Nathan was reading Frost, Noyes, Coleridge, and Poe. At 14, pause for my Android here. Okay. And at 14, Nathan realized he could write too, and wrote horror and fantasy. He began writing poetry at 15. Nathan's poems have been published in the Bellwether Review, an annual published by PCC Rock Creek. This month we'll see more work featured in Ghost Town Anthology by Printed Matter. He also has a chapbook out called Junk Mail of the Heart, with another couple to be released soon, all by Pub Rejects Press. That's a great press name. When he's not writing, Nathan enjoys photography and studying to be an IT nerd at PCC. And here's Nathan.
Yeah, I actually do have a couple chapbooks out. Dog Stops Here is the newest one. I have it in my backpack. It's mostly little stories with a couple poems in there. Anyway, Ty Burke Neff was a musician from Ireland. A week after his 32nd birthday, he was killed in Iraq. And he was part of this band called the Calvinists. And one of the songs that they did was about the Memphis Belle, so it's kind of referenced in here. He's flying high now as he sings into the porous amplified surface of the microphone to the aged crew of the Memphis Belle, while he twitches the strings of the big double bass. He's flying high now. He has been. Ever since that Tuesday in Bantry, when his mom, bandmates, and friends held his hands as they sang his spirit home. They sang as his life support system shut down. They sang as his breath slowed to a stop. They sang to him as he passed away, surrounded by the notes strummed from the breath-fingered vocal cords. He's flying high now as 2,000 people, fans, friends, families, loved ones, overrun the town, pack St. Finbar's church so they may bid him farewell, share their stories, weep, blow noses into tissues, eat, drink, laugh, but keep him alive. He's flying high now, as the frozen flower that gave him life is flown from Bantry Court to Dublin, to be planted in another garden, so that his mother might be comforted, that his heart still beats on to his tune, although in another scarred chest. And that 8 others receive his life, so they might breathe on, sing on, spread his smile, spread his laughter, so that he may continue to fly. This is called Drunken Howls. Sometimes I feel like howling at the moon. Half-empty bottle of Black Bush in one hand, discordant harpsichord voice box in the other. To shake the clouds, quake the stars, scream each tear of my heart to Mars. And sometimes I wish to scrape the layers of hair-covered skin with the serrated rigger's blade, stripped by blood-drenched strip, then sew it back together with a canvas needle. Sailor's palm strapped to my right hand. Sail twine pokes through the needle's eye, point pierces the epidermis as the needle plunges into the thick layers to sew a sailor's edge between strips of skin. Scoop out the fat with a soup spoon, toss it on the fire as I sculpt my body into something new, something appealing, a thinner me, a more muscular me, and maybe a different face. And sometimes I want to slam the paper cutter's blade upon my wrist to cut off my hands so that I may no longer be able to write. And sometimes I want to jab a hooked crochet needle into my eyes and pluck those little gelled orbs from the sockets so that I can no longer see. And sometimes I wish to grab some tongs surround my tongue with the cupped ends and rip it from the black hole of my mouth so that I can no longer speak or sing. And sometimes I just want to stab my chest with the curved end of a rusted crowbar so that I might pry open my ribcage, reach in the cavity past oozing organs to rip out my heart as it still beats the blood, pushes through the veins, arteries, and capillaries, that toss it on the ground and stop it beneath my boot so that I can no longer fucking feel. And sometimes I want to shove a spoon up my nostril to scoop out the 3 brain cells that still remain so that I can no longer think. And then maybe, just maybe, she might find me interesting. Heartaches and highways. I walked many a foot-worn, cracked pavement highway to the battered, ivy-cloaked, wrought iron gates of a heartache. At an intersection just outside of town, the street signs full of rusted shotgun holes, the ground littered with ancient red shells. And to the right is the sound of play-yard swings, the shouted laughter of children, the moans, the sighs of microwave bedroom romance. To the left is the bare strings of a harp as she fondles the light tunes from her strings. And so that is the direction I go, to follow the silvery seductive tones of her siren song. It's where the dilapidated houses barely stand, leaning as if half drunk as the roofs decay, sink down to the sponge, damp, rotted floors. It's where Main Street lies empty, windows busted in by kids tossing stones. They look like eyes damaged, blackened by a drunkard's whiskey-raged fist. It's where cars rust, mounted on wooden blocks, almost hidden by weed-infested, overgrown lawns, abandoned, left to lie in the rain and snow, left to die in a desert's dry, baked heat. And yes, I walked many a foot-worn, cracked pavement highway to the battered, ivy-cloaked, wrought iron gates of a heartache. But I will still continue to walk alongside these faded white and yellow lines, past the next jaded intersection, until I reach the gates of the next town, over the hill, past winter barren trees, to the summer lands where a sunflower blooms. The Dying Cuchulainn is a bronze statue that was molded by an artist named Oliver Shepherd. At one point, Eamon de Valera put it in the GPO of Dublin, General Post Office, in honor of the men of 1916. The bronze is pounded, molded, cast into a dying figure, lashed to a lone standing stone, erect on his gore-stained feet to resist May's bitter throng. His shield has fallen to the earth. The edge digs a shallow trench in the rock-boned mud. His sword is still grasped at his final breath gasp through weakened lungs, and his battle-crazed strength ebbs with the blood tide. He is bent over the rope, tied about his waist. His shoulder is pierced by the hungry talons of the Morrigan's crow. Her caws echo across the chariot-churned field to gleefully mock his hanging corpse. She's eager to taste his eyes with her beak as she thrusts his black wings to the sky to bear Cullen's hound to the Etherworld's shadowed island. Some time ago, a friend of mine posted a link to an article about the 6 words that the ancient Greeks had for love. There was like the passionate love, there was the love of self, love of other people, the playful love. The passionate love was eros, and that was not necessarily the most admired one, but here's eros. Behind the locked hotel room door, she hears my knuckles rap upon the wood. She stretches, opens to let me in. Her mouth grasps for mine as her arms reach around my body, a tight embrace behind the locked hotel room door. My palms brush back soft strands of blonde hair as lips caress her throat, and she stretches, opens to let me in. I pull her white flannel jammy top over her head, admire her soft, naked skin, kiss erect nipples behind the locked hotel room door. Bottoms slide over curves, fingers stroke pliant indentations. As I kiss her very center, she stretches, opens to let me in. I slither up, taste her sweat-dewed skin as my shorts crumple to the gray carpet floor. Behind the locked hotel room door, she stretches, opens to let me in. Gold stars. When we were kids, we coveted the gold stars. We looked in our spelling test for that gold sticker pasted below the red 100% ink. Or if we banged our fingers against the ivory keys of the mahogany-stained upright piano, correctly timed our tips to touch the ebony keys as the tune spills from our hands. The teacher sticks a sticker on the music book page a song is printed. Then, when we grow up, have children of our own, we look forward to see the glow of their ecstatic faces as they bring home ribbons of gold stars or math quizzes, perfect attendance, reading skills, or even for just not talking in class. However, once they are grown, we dread the golden stars. We would rather see our babies wake up in the middle of the night, night lights glint off night sweat skin with their post-traumatic screams. Or they could return to us as they adjust to the use of their metallic arms and legs. Or the scars on their bodies can fade and be covered with memorial tattoos. Just so long as they come back to us alive. How much more time do I have?
What? I didn't hear, I'm sorry?
How much more time?
Oh, you're fine. We've got
Okay.
another
Okay.
5-10 minutes, yeah.
Sunsets. Red-orange clouds border the sky, with the deep blue of the ending day as the sun descends behind these hills that line this North Idaho valley. The barely cracked open bottle of Black Bush is nestled in its brown bag between my feet as I sit on this bench and watch the evening sun reflect upon the currents of the Kootenai River. I reach down for it, twist out the cork, bring its glass mouth to my flesh mouth, take a couple of swigs before I pop it back in, and place the bottle between my black denim thighs. Then I recall that first time I saw the sun paint the sky over the Pacific off the coast of Oregon as I stood on the stern deck of the CP Columbia, smoking hand-rolled fags and tossing them overboard to be eaten by the waves. And I remember how I admired the shades of red, the shades of oranges, the shades of deep purplish blue as the sun's brush swath its oil paint-stained bristles across this evening skyward canvas. And I wished someone was there to stand beside me as we watched him fall to his nightly slumber, her hand clasped inside mine as we whispered our ah barely above the diesel noise, but for our ears alone. But here I sit on this lonesome bench over a decade later, a solitary figure bent on getting pissed drunk as the sun climbs down the western mountains, wishing that she was here with me to lean her head upon my shoulder as we whisper new poetry in response to nature's nightly art painted across this North Idaho skyline. But here I am, slightly buzzed and alone. Persimmons. I walked down the paved stone path to the Lansu Chinese Gardens, a place of serenity and beauty in the middle of downtown Portland. But just outside these walls, panhandlers beg for a quarter to buy their next pint or their next bag, crossies rent out their mouths, dealers sell their junk. But in here, you can forget. The blue sky is lined with faded clouds. It keeps these stones dry as the sun warms the back of my neck and I tread over covered footbridges and breezeways around the pond upon which pink water lilies bloom. Then I spy her, the persimmon tree. Naked branches stretch over the carpet of red, yellow, brown strips of leaves crinkle beneath the touch of my foot. In one cupped bark hand, she holds a lone persimmon fruit, and she waits for me to reach out my fingertips and pluck it from her wooden grasp. I raise it to my lips. Light breaths raise the skin as my teeth slowly pierce its yielding flesh, and the sweet juice floats over my tongue, slides out of my mouth, and drips down the corner of my chin. The tree shudders with a gust of wind, and I look up at her, spasming branches, and smile, mouth full of her fruit. The widow's weight loss plan. The dark exoskeleton spider sits on the ceiling right above me. Her multifaceted eyes stare at me, study me, wait for me to sleep so that I can commence the attack. Her plans are in the desk back in the web she wove in the corner. Now flies panic as they dangle in her trap, screams buzz from their miniature throats as they beg for someone to come and rescue them from their plight, from their sure demise. But I just let them be, as I hope she returns to twirl her silk around their bodies and suck their guts, their blood, their lives from their wriggling bodies, because then she'd leave me alone. Or else she'll just become a hell of a lot skinnier once this book smashes her into the ceiling. I got a couple more.
Yeah, one more is perfect.
Okay. Scars enhance her beauty. Far above the rain clouds, darkened with the shame tears, the moon looks for sunflowers in bloom. He spies her through a thin clearing as she stands in her November, rain-drenched garden and weeps. He reaches down one ray, bent fingertips wipe her damp eyes as he whispers soft songs. And then he slides his hand to the green stem covering her heart to touch her scarred skin. And he wishes he could peel her scars from her body and leave her smooth as her birth. He placed them on his asteroid pockmarked face, take her pain, scream to wake the fucking sun. But he knows he can't. All he can do is hold her in the grass moonlight. She raises her face, smiles at his sad eyes, and she realizes her scars enhance her beauty.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize to everybody for being late. My name is Rio. This is Nathan Tompkins, in case you came in the middle of it. This is assembly, and we like to, once a month, at Show and Tell Gallery, highlight, what it takes to be an artist and make a living. And so, Nathan, thank you for joining us tonight and giving us a taste of your art. And now I'm going to grill you on how to make it happen. Yeah. And because I'm only working with about 3 cylinders here tonight, Melissa has kindly come up with some starters for me, which I really appreciate. And let's see, I'm just going to pick one at random. And how about, what's the most important lesson you want to share to a new artist that you feel that you've learned for yourself and you can pass on?
Don't be afraid of criticism. Either good or bad. It's always going to be beneficial. The bad will, you'll hopefully, if your ego doesn't get in the way, will hopefully let you see what doesn't work and what you do. And the good, good will let you see what does work. But you have to learn that some people just want to say, oh, that's beautiful, pat you on the head, and send you on your way. That does nothing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, yeah, if you can't get challenged, how do you grow? So,
Yeah.
So to that end, do you workshop your poems very much?
Well, sometimes I have friends that we send poems back together. In fact, one was right there.
Yeah.
And we tell each other what works, what doesn't.
So that's great. So that's okay. So in keeping with the focus of this show, you have you created a support group for yourself to support your art, right? Yeah.
It's a symbiotic thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you? So is it just the 2 of you, or are there more of you in that, or is it a wider group than that? No?
We're basically the core, but there's others that we send it to too. So.
What else do you do to support yourself artistically?
I go to readings a lot. I go to open mics and I go to the slam and see what what works, and I take it in and try. Sometimes I incorporate it with my mind if I like it.
Yeah. So you just hear something that you like and you think, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
What is it? What is it? Imitation?
And,
Is
you
this
got
sincere
in person like with poetry, you have to read. You have to read it. You have to read. Not just, read like the old classics like Yeats, Noyes, those guys, Poe, but also read the current stuff like, Johnny No Bueno, Aaron Bradley, Leah Noble Davidson.
These are the names that you like.
They're actually, except for Aaron Bradley, he's no longer current, no longer local, but the rest are Portland area too.
Cool. All right. So you keep a bead on the scene, but then when you're pulling back from the scene and you're creating, what are the things that get your juices going, just for you personally? Like, is there a trigger for you that you can always fall back on?
Sometimes if you go, somebody will give me a prompt. Because maybe if I'm racking my brains, I have nothing to write on. Sometimes a prompt, and then I'll go, oh yeah, let's see how I can make that work for me. Other times it'll just be something that I see, like maybe or hear on the radio, see on the TV, hear on the radio, or see just walking down the street or walking along the waterfront.
So poetry and poems, they're always on your mind. They're always top of
Yeah.
mind for you, where it is. So what, okay, so when you sent me your bio, the first thing you emphasized was, poetry was one of the earliest parts of your life. So, but then you started reading, or writing, pardon me, you said horror and
Right,
short
because at that
fiction.
time, that's what I was reading. It was like Stephen
Okay.
King, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke.
So you've always had a strong connection to written word, but at what point did you want to turn it into poetry and spoken word? Was there a point at which you realized
As far
that
as poetry, I don't know. That's 25 years ago. I just decided to try it, pretty much,
When?
and it wasn't anything that good. But
Really, my first poem was brilliant.
in fact, I burned all of those from
Really?
back in the day. No, it wasn't that good. But I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and then finally, my winter term, first time at PCC, I took a class under Bill Severly and learned a lot. I learned that I wasn't that great, which was important.
Yeah, but as you said, criticism is important. You learned that, and then you redoubled your effort. You didn't allow yourself to think, "Oh, I'll never be that good, so why
Yeah,
bother?"
right.
It
Then I took
motivated
him again the next term.
But that's great.
So,
Actually, that you motivated me to want to look into that class. Now, what's his last name? Severly? Severly? you said?
Severly, he's not teaching there anymore.
Oh, okay.
Now it's Michael McCall. I also took him a
Oh.
couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
So, and he taught me how to revise, which was important.
Oh, that's cool. So is this something that you hope to be able to make your living at?
I don't think anything.
No,
Most people will
no.
be living at it.
Oh,
But it's
yeah.
bit, I don't know, at one point it was probably just a hobby, but now it's a lot less so.
How do you mean less so?
I view it kind of, I don't know, since I'm more and more serious as I go along, pretty much every day I'm more serious about it.
Uh-huh.
At one point it was like, okay, I'm just doing this just kind of, because it's fun. And it is, but at one point, it was just help sort through feelings, which I still kind of do at times, because that's always important. But it's more and more serious. It's like I'm more and more serious about creating a great product at the end.
Oh, I see what you mean by it's less of a hobby and that you're more serious about it.
Right,
Oh,
basically, it's like, it'll never be a 100% job. I can tell you that. But it'll always be like another facet of me, something that I do, maybe hopefully make some money at.
Well, so it's clearly important to you, so how do you juggle that with making money? Are you still a full-time student? Or
I'm a full-time student and part-time worker.
Yeah, okay.
I work at PCC at Rock Creek, in the computer labs.
Yeah?
And basically just monitor, the lab and make sure everything's running good and help people every once in a while. And such,
But you have a family too, don't you? You're
I have a
married.
daughter.
Okay.
She lives with her mom though, so.
Oh, I see. The two poems I heard of yours, it seemed like they were both pretty biographical about your daughter. I think both the links you sent me. What's her name?
Jacinta.
Jacinta. That's very pretty.
Yeah, it's Jacinta Annabelle. Actually, her middle name comes from a poem as well.
Oh,
So.
yeah.
But
Are a lot of your poems biographical or autobiographical?
like that.
Yeah, it seems that way to me. What do you think about that? Is that's by
It's
choice?
just part of me. One way I do is just kind of sort through feelings, or I just want to take a little snapshot of my experiences and share them, and hope people connect with it at some level.
Okay, all right. So you're not trying to make statements about the world, that it's more of a personal kind of what a cathartic experience for you?
Yeah, that's
Part of it?
yeah.
No?
People who make statements about the world all the time get boring to me anyway.
Yeah, okay.
And so, but like I said, I read a lot of the contemporary stuff. It's mostly 9 times out of 10, it's like something that they've experienced. Like I don't know. There's this guy from New York. His name is Taylor Nolling. I admire his work. He at least used to be a teacher.
What's his last name?
Mali, M-A-L-I.
Oh, okay.
He's been published by Right Bloody Press.
Uh-huh.
And basically, some of his poems are about his teaching experiences. Some of them are humorous. One of them, it starts out humorous because he keeps calling himself an idiot in relation to one of his wives. Then he starts talking about how from his apartment building he used to be able to see the World Trade Center. And that on that day he wondered how people could jump to certain death to escape the fire. And then his own wife jumps out the window. And he says that depression is just another fire. And it kind of strikes me too. Based on his experiences and with things as well.
So, given that we're in this autobiographical genre, if I can use that word now, in the world of poetry, what do you think is the difference between good quality in that and not? What is it that you're aspiring to make yours better? What is it that you see in the autobiographical poets that strikes you as, yeah, that's good, that's what I want more of in my work?
I think the simplicity goes a long way.
Okay.
The more complex it is, the more you just want to space off, or at least me.
Uh-huh.
Even though I know the words.
What's your, define simplicity in your terms?
Just basically, using words that everyone uses, everyone knows.
Okay.
It's like, don't go off using like 4-syllable words every other, don't say surplus or superfluous. Yeah, you know what the word is.
Now you've done it to me, now I can't do it.
But anyway, don't go, saying that, then, then like God, then, 20,000 other multi-syllable words. Michael McDowell taught me try to use as many single syllable words, Anglo-Saxon, because they carry more power than the Latinized words do. So.
Well, they got more consonants, so they got more percussive in them now. What, do you have a routine so that you can get in like a certain number of lines per day? Do you have?
Well, this year I'm trying to write a poem a day.
Okay, all right. So
whether or not I revise it that day or later on, I'm just trying to do one poem a day.
So you have a schedule, but it changes from semester to semester, right? Depending on
that does. But I can always set aside time.
Can you? I mean, I can't even do it as a part-time student. I need to do it as a full-time student.
I can always set aside time to write a poem.
Really?
Even if it's just like a couple lines here and there throughout the day.
Oh, all right. So you don't have to like carve out a whole chunk. You just...
No, I don't have to.
Oh, okay. And you can do that, or just a couple.
A lot of times I
here,
just do it at work,
there?
or I do it late at night when I can't sleep, which is 9 times out of 10.
Wow. How nice of you to have constructed it in your mind that this is an easy, free process. I appreciate that.
It's not easy free, but
but you don't make it sound torturous, though. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to have all the shades must be drawn, and the coffee cup must be this full, and the clock must be right there, the phone must be off, and now I'm going to write my master's.
No.
You don't do that to yourself.
I'm not that much
Well, but a lot of artists are, though. But that's good. So you're able to produce volume then, because you don't. What do you think it is? You don't put too much pressure on yourself, or it's just fun for you? Or?
My goal is just right now is just to write one. Whether or not it's any good, I don't give a shit. It's like more, just make sure it's there. And I can always go back later and revise it, or maybe just burn it if I don't like it. But my goal is just to write one a day.
I really admire that. There's a lot of freedom in that. Yeah. In other words, just do it and don't judge it. Yeah. That's brilliant. Okay, we can all go home now. I mean, there's really nothing more to talk about after that. I mean, that is it. That's like, just do it, don't judge it. Yes, thanks. I was just
you had the poem, you had one poem that went over my head, unfortunately, and it was about, you referred to the 1916 Irish Revolution, is that? The Dying to Cullen.
And
it seemed like it was turning into a fantasy thing at the end or something.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Cullen was he was a mythological hero from Ireland. He's also known as the Irish Achilles. Basically, his dad was a god, like any other mythological hero. When he would go into what's called the battle rage, basically they just grow gigantic and go sprout through whole armies of invaders. The big central story among the Irish is the epic story, the Táin Cúailnge, which is the cattle raid at Cooley. Since Cuchulainn was from Ulster, basically there was this curse put upon the warriors from Ulster that if their land was invaded, they would all suffer labor pains. And well, Connacht decided to invade them to steal the spoil. And so everybody went to labor pains. Well, since his lineage was not one of the warriors of Ulster, his father was not one of the warriors, he did not have to suffer that. So basically he fought the entire invading army of Connacht single-handedly. And it culminated into this several-day battle with somebody that it was like a brother to him, Ferdinand. And they fought at this ford. It ended with him killing his best friend. And that was like the big battle of the whole thing. And finally, they Connacht went home. Years later, they were said that the only way that they would be able to win was if they killed the king of horses, which is Cuchulainn's horse, the king of chariot drivers, which is Cuchulainn's chariot driver, and then the king of heroes, which is Cuchulainn himself. They had a spear for each one. And when the spear finally pierced him, in order to fight off the invading army, he lashed himself to a stone so he could fight them off. Now the Morrigan, her crow was on his shoulder the whole time while he died.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the crows would take their legend was that the crows would take the souls of the warriors back into the other army. And Oliver Shepherd, like in the early 20th century, did a statue of the dying Cuchulainn, and then 20, 30 years later, Henry de Valera, who was leader there, put it in the General Post Office, which was the base of operations during the Easter Rebellion in 1916.
Which post office?
The General Post Office, Dublin.
In Dublin. Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting. For those of you who just come in, this is Nathan Tompkins giving us an off-the-cuff Irish mythology lesson. In addition to sharing his poems with us. He is a poet who's a full-time student at PCC and a part-time worker, and you missed some nice poems. But we are talking about what it takes to create and what it takes to balance creativity and keeping it together, body and soul. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Nathan? Yeah.
What would be your advice to artists marginalized by their politics, their gender identity, sport?
Can you repeat that, please?
What would be your advice to artists marginalized by their politics, their religion, or their gender identity?
I would just say keep at it, do what you do.
But I mean, would you advise them to keep the language of the people that marginalize them? Or would you advise them to create their own personal language that represents their subculture?
That's interesting. Basically, if you're trying to reach across lines, you have to find some sort of common ground. No matter what the hell you do.
The common ground for them is kind of a brutal treatment.
Well, I get what you're saying.
So they want to use big words because big words are not brutal; they're flowery versus just
But you use big words, you start losing your audience. You don't
care about.
Yeah,
the
but which
that's
audience
the
though?
margin.
I always take issue with this particular, line of thinking.
I mean, but you say you don't lose your audience, but you're not speaking to them in the first place because they've marginalized you.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you still.
Just jump in.
That's a hard one, really.
I mean, would you just tell them to keep doing it, or would you tell them?
I would just tell them, just keep doing what they're doing. Maybe try to find some sort of common ground. Maybe stretch try to educate people as best they can.
May I chime in for a second? I would say that the two models, James Joyce actually is a good model to look at. He tried to destroy the English language of Finnegan's Wake, which is large portions of it are in 3 different languages, and obviously since he was Irish, it's the language of the oppressor for him. And Paul Celan did something similar, except he was smart and decided not to write a 300-page novel in 3 different languages at once, but short poems, which are in German, but he knew like 10 to 12 different languages, and he was a Romanian Jew who was incarcerated during the Holocaust.
And Joyce was also writing to his schizophrenic daughter in her language.
James Joyce?
In Finnegan's Wake, he was writing to his daughter who was actually schizophrenic in a language that she would probably better understand than
That makes sense too.
yeah. So,
But
yeah,
I'm just saying that's a model you could use, but you got to accept the fact that you might be cutting your. You got to choose where your audience is going to be.
Totally, but we're not going to make money with this.
No, it's completely your choice. I'm just suggesting models. Sorry.
Do you have any stories about Finn McCool and Brian Barumar?
I was, sorry, you had competition.
Do you have any Irish stories about Finn McCool and Brian Barumar?
Finn McCool. Well, let's see, that's been a long time. Well, there was the case of Diarmid and Grania. He fell in love with a woman, she was supposed to be really beautiful. Actually, this is a common theme among Celtic mythology. You see it in, with Deirdre and the sons of Ishna. You see it in King Arthur. It's the same thing. The king chieftain falls in love with a beautiful woman. She falls in love with the best knight or the best warrior that he has, and then he gets pissed off and chases him down. And Diarmid was dying. After Finn McCool had supposedly forgiven him, Diarmid lay dying, and Finn McCool was supposed to have some healing properties. You could, give them water from his own hands and save their life, but he refused. So Diarmid died. That's as far as I know. I don't remember on that one.
I have a question that's unrelated to Ireland.
All right.
He tried to steer us back on topic here.
Technically, sadly for everyone. I was wondering, so you talked about how you started reading and being encouraged to read at a very young age, which is one way to learn poetry. But in Portland, as you know, poetry is also a performance art. Who were your mentors, or what were the different kinds of open mics that got you there? Were you a Catholic?
All right. Back in spring of '94, I was taking an advanced poetry writing class under Bill Severly again. He's also one of the editors of Windfall, which is a biannual quarterly or whatever magazine, and publishes it with Michael McDowell, who teaches there now, and actually taught me 18 years later. But anyway, there was a group of us who were starting to get into that. We were like in the advanced class, and there was a bunch of us. So we would go to Cafe Lena, and they were doing that way back, and they were still around.
Yeah.
And that was when I first stepped up in front of anybody and started, reading.
Where was was it Cafe Elena?
Cafe Lena used to be on Hawthorne.
Yes, it was
Long
huge. It was a poetry scene that was around for a long time. That
Yeah.
Anne Greenbaum and her husband ran.
It was like on Tuesdays or something like that.
Yeah, it was before my time. But so were you nervous when you first?
Oh, I'm always
were there?
nervous.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous.
So am I.
Been doing this for a long time. It's still nervous to this day. But it's only been in the last couple of years where things started happening for me. So, like I said, I took Michael McDowell, and he taught me how to revise, which I didn't really know before. And I just write it and think, okay, it's done, and go on to the next. But then once I started revising, I started realizing, hey, wait, this was shit before. This is actually better. And then I started reading, again live some more. And then I started taking how other people perform. People who actually are making names of themselves here in Portland. And just been going on and on and on. Like, especially since August. Since August, it seems like almost every month I'm up on stage reading for a while.
Anybody else have a question?
By the way, if you're here for the open mic, we start that at 8 p.m. The sign up will be at the Cream and Sugar. Maybe a little sooner.
What would she say about cream and sugar?
I said, if you want to sign up for the open mic, you should find the Cream and Sugar.
Oh, find the cream and sugar if you want the sign-up sheet. Okay, I got it. In the back there, thank you. Yeah.
I was about to ask if you ever got stage fright before.
Got stage fright?
Yeah. Got so nervous that.
But I couldn't do it. Actually, last time I read here was on the 21st of October. And I hadn't slept the night before. And so I've been like hopped up on coffee, just drinking coffee, and I don't really drink a whole lot.
So kind of super
So I was like
excited.
going on, like some crazy guy. It wasn't that great.
Yeah, because I've had instances at PCC whenever I was doing open mic, and one time, oh my god, my legs were shaking like crazy. My breathing was almost non-existent. I was talking too fast.
My hands shake every time. Sometimes they shake almost where I can barely read it, but every single time.
Well, as they say in acting, use it. I mean, you know, I was auditioning for over 25 years and I still get up and my hands will shake. I'll be doing something and I'll look down and it's like, oh, shit. Traitor. Just go through it. But that, I don't know, that does kind of bring up a question like, I don't know if this is a good question because it's kind of stupid in a way. Why do we do what we do? I don't know. Do you have a sense of what drives you to read your poetry as well as to write it?
Well, I don't know. I like to, not necessarily for the catching, that's nice.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the accolades, which is nice. I think for just a few minutes, sometimes I can pretend like it's somebody else.
Ah, okay.
And then basically, it's like when I read, I don't really, half the time I don't really see the audience. I'm looking up everywhere. But it's just kind of like a little blur. But like for a little while I'm somebody else and pretending I'm,
But we established that most of your poems